Eugene, you've just spent the last week in Beijing and Shanghai on your first trip to China. What has been the most memorable thing for you about China?
Oh, one memorable thing. The overall impression is the size and scale and speed of the development in China. You can read about it, you can study it, but you have nothing to compare it to because nothing like this has ever happened before. And so to see Beijing stretching to the horizon with high rises, and Shanghai even greater. It is an amazing sight, and one that I think obviously more people should see. It gives you a real feel for what's going on in China.
Has your perception about China changed, and if so, how?
My perception has changed in any number of ways. I find it fascinating the extent to which people know, in the political sense, how far they can push the boundaries, where the boundaries are. I find it fascinating that the boundaries are obviously moving, or obviously have moved. No telling exactly where they go from here. You read about the growing gap between rich and poor in China, but you don't really have a sense of how rich and how poor until you come here and you take a look. And finally, there are similarities between the two societies that wouldn't necessarily be apparent unless you saw them. But in many ways, I think the United States and China have perhaps more in common than either country acknowledges.
So if there is, what is, say, one thing that you think the average American should know about China that he or she doesn't already know?
Well, I think the average American should know that China, for all its size and wealth, is in many ways still a developing country. I think the average American sees China rising, sees America declining in relation to China, not absolutely, but in relation to China, and has a somewhat different picture. China has a lot of business to take care of internally, and I think the average American probably sees China as more fixated toward expanding its position in the world and challenging America, rather than fixated on the very real task of developing improving conditions for the billion people who are still waiting for that sort of improvement. If more people, I think, knew what has to be at the top of China's agenda, they'd perhaps be less concerned about an expansionist China, at least in the sort of geopolitical sense.
Has your experience this last week, do you think that has changed the way that you're going to approach the whole sort of U.S.-China relations angle?
Well, it gives me a foundation from which to approach it. Before, having never been to China, you can't do what I do. You can't write a column in Washington and never talk about China, but you can't speak with authority about things you don't know. I know a bit now. I'm certainly no expert on China, but I have a sort of foundation that I can draw on when I want to talk about China and China-U.S. relations and where China is headed. So that's an enormous gift. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the committee of 100 for making this possible.
Thanks very much. And anything else you want to say for posterity?
Just one reflection. It is so important, I think, for Americans to see China, for Chinese to see America. I think it's important for all of us who understand that to also understand that not all Americans will react in the same way. On the way to the airport in Shanghai, we went past the big new aquatic center in Shanghai, which is an enormous complex, and I think someone jokingly said that, well, there go the gold medals that the U.S. was going to win in swimming and diving in the Olympics next year. We said that in jest. But I think it's important to realize that some Americans seeing that would be serious and would see that as a challenge. And this essential dynamic of China rising and America feeling threatened is going to persist for a while, and so this is going to be a delicate time to manage that relationship until we get used to China's new role and status, and China gets used to it too.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Really appreciate it.